So starting our practice today with a posture that isn't too involved, isn't too overly demanding and dynamic. Just kind of let your hands hang to the floor. Let your head hang, close your eyes, relax your jaw, and just allow these first 2 minutes to be more about, as we say, tapping in than about connecting so much to the body. Even of course we know that we do need the body. And so keep your legs straight, but again, you don't have to overly aggress keeping your legs straight. And for anybody who feels their lower back a little bit compromised, if their legs and knees are completely straight, when it's a passive forward bend, really this is the only time that it's okay to bend the knees. You can bend the knees. If it helps alleviate your lower back strain, by all means. And one of the best things about being inverted is what it does to us neurologically and just overall chemically in our physiology. And by bringing the head, the brain, below the heart, you actually allow a little bit more perfusion of oxygen and blood to your brain, because you got to remember that the brain is essentially a biological organ. It depends on our circulation, it depends on our breathing for its own function. And the degree of its function actually presents a degree of life quality that is otherwise unavailable without the biological support network. Notice just the very composition of your face, your facial structures, like your forehead, your eyelids, your cheeks, your jaw muscle. You know, the jaw muscle, the masseter, pound for pound is the strongest muscle in the whole body. And one of the reasons it is so is not just because we eat so much, because not everybody eats all the time, but it has more to do with tension that we hold in the body that also is expressed in the face. So if you separate your teeth, the top from the bottom row, you can actually start to unravel some of the history of that jaw strain. And let's now start to pick up ever so gently on the breath. So take the next 3 to 4, even 5 deep breaths to be a little bit more, call it exuberant, about the way that you're inhaling and exhaling and the way that really your abdomen is moving when you're breathing in and out. So the abdomen has to expand and enlarge on the inhale and then contract and pull in on the exhale. Okay, and so then wherever your hands are, place your hands onto your hips. Keep your eyes closed if they were closed to begin with, or just don't open them too much. And then with your toes lifted, just imagine you're pressing the floor away from you as you stand up. Heart lifts first. So you stand up with a little micro hint of a back bend. And once you're upright, bring your arms down, collect your feet underneath you, and whether you like your feet together, legs together, mountain pose, or hip distance, that's up to you, but just kind of collect the structure of your feet in terms of your perception, your awareness of them. Okay, and then bringing your arms right at the sides, have your fingertips point straight down to the knees, straight down to the floor, and actually make a little bit more of a concerted effort without bending anywhere, without hunching your back, to try to get your fingertips closer to the knees. So reach your arms down, and you'll notice that by reaching your fingertips down in this way, your shoulders start to slide down away from the ears, which is helpful in releasing a lot of our neck muscles, our neck and shoulder muscles that usually compress the neck and then literally suffocate the way that we breathe. So as you exhale, give this fingertip reach one more go. And with a quiet, easy face, inhale, lift your arms up. And then exhale, fold forward carefully. Make sure that your legs are working for this one, so it's more of an active forebend. And inhale, lengthen the torso. Exhale, again, fold. And doing this a couple times, as you inhale and lengthen, project your torso as far as you can from the hips. And as you exhale, let the length of that half lift be a part of your bend. Inhale, a couple more times, lengthen. Lift your toes, sitting bones back. Exhale, fold. Now close your eyes, inhale, lengthen. Take notice of the feeling of your spinal, your whole torso structure. And then bend the knees, plant your palms, and see if you could do this with your eyes closed. Step your way back to high plank. In case you have anything that you need to work around your wrists, elbows, or shoulders, you can do high plank with your knees on the ground. It's not any less of a high plank in that case. But if your legs are lifted, your knees are lifted, start to gather up the action of the muscles on the front of the legs, the beloved quadriceps. And sometimes they don't feel like they're beloved because they might be sore or they might not be responding as quickly with the kind of snap that we want, but it all just takes a little bit more consistency. Relax your jaw, take one more deep breath in, and keeping your legs strong, lower yourself all the way to the mat and keep your legs active until you actually land. Then without moving the hands, just point your toes back, press the toenails into the mat, and then come into a low cobra. And at least a low cobra, if you feel like your body's already ready for a little bit of a higher cobra, that's fine. You can come into it, but keep your glutes engaged and try to literally kind of feed your pubic bone into the floor. Take one more inhale like that. And as you exhale, come down to the mat, bring your head down, push yourself to child's pose. Keep your hands as far as you can from the shoulders. Actually start to push away with your hands in child's pose. Keeping the head down and neck relaxed. Then transform child's pose to downward dog. Our first downward dog. There is, as with any modality of exercise and movement, a warming up stage that we're going through. And this is part of the reason that the sun salutation as a sequence of muscular patterns and movements was actually founded and developed. So when you're in your first dog pose, just give your body time, give your muscles time, technically, to catch up to the demands that your mind is issuing. Because we sometimes know the body kind of lags behind for whatever reason, whatever day we're having, whatever kind of night we've had. And it takes a little more time to have those messages, those neural messages from the brain actually land into something substantial by the time it gets to their muscular destination. Spread your fingers a little wider. Our first downward dog is going to be a little longer. And then try this. Lift your heels up, then keep the heels lifted, but bend your knees while still pressing with your hands. And bend your knees perhaps to where the shins come parallel to the ground. And then at that point, separate your knees. So it's almost like you're doing a malasana, a squat, and use your hands in an attempt to wedge your torso right between the legs. So see if you can get these side ribs right to your inner thighs. Now keep the heels lifted, keep pressing away with your hands and slowly straighten your knees. And then bring your heels back down. And if for the last couple of breaths, try to lift your toes. Even if they technically don't lift, just keep sending the messages within the lift. The most important requirement is that the messages are being sent. Sooner or later, they will be received. Take a deep breath and lift your heels again. And as you exhale, bend the knees, walk or step your feet up to the hands. And then inhale, lengthen the torso, draw the chest and heart away from the hips. Exhale, fold and draw the chest towards the feet. Inhale, come all the way up to stand using your legs to really saturate all of the quality of movement of coming up. Exhale, arms down. Inhale, arms go up again, toes go up. Just make sure the eyebrows don't go up. Exhale as you fold. Keep the face out of it, and just keep your breath as the guiding principle. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, plant your palms. Step back to high plank. Now perhaps our first chaturanga. Descend a little bit slower on this chaturanga, and if you wish to come to the floor for this one, that's fine. Inhale, slide forward to upward dog. And exhale, come back to downward dog. Without visually looking at the hands, you have your body awareness. So try to bring your hands a little bit closer than where you normally have a habit of setting them. And what I often see in classes, and it's not like it's a big deal, but we always have to be aware of habits. What I often see in classes is the hands are too wide apart and the feet are too close together. And we want to kind of invert that. So we want to keep a pretty generous space between the feet and a little bit more narrowing of space between the hands. That will allow us to get into a different part of our whole muscular structure in the legs than the shoulders and the chest. Good. Take a big inhale, lift your heels high. Exhale, bend the knees low, walk or step forward. Inhale with straight legs lengthen, keep your quads on. Exhale, keeping the quads on, fold. Big inhale sweeps you all the way up to stand, using your legs as the number one pump that lifts. And exhale, arms down. Last one here. Big inhale, big lift. As your arms lift, lift your sternum, lift your eyes. Exhale, fold with a swan dive. So the main idea is to get the torso away from the legs. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, plant your palms and step back. On the following exhale, lower down to chaturanga. Proceed to upward dog, maximize your inhale, and then maximize the exhale that brings you back to downward dog. Okay? Keep your eyes closed. Let's make this downward dog a little bit more interesting, because anything that can help break our habits will actually help to kind of reframe how we use our body. So as you keep your head down, bring your legs together, keep your eyes closed. And then let's start by lifting the right leg up, but don't look at it. Just notice if you can tell whether or not your toes are pointing straight down. Now, the leg doesn't have to lift that high, technically speaking. As long as the toes face down, we're just really using the top leg, kicking leg, to force the left heel down a little bit better. Take 2 more breaths. Lift the bottom toes too. Good. And then right leg down. Keep the legs together before you lift your left leg up. And then once you get your left leg up, take notice, not with your eyes, but just kind of use your sensory input from the leg, your body awareness, to tell if your toes are facing straight down. Then use the kicking force of the left leg to pin the right heel. And then bring the left leg down. On the next inhale, lift your heels high. Exhale, bend your knees low. Walk or step forward as if you're trying not to hurt the mat. Softness. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold down to the end of the breath as you scoop your belly. And on the following inhale, you come all the way up, kind of like this orchestrated dance maneuver that brings your hands and the inhale together simultaneously. Sun salutation bees. Bend the knees for bees. Arms up. Weigh yourself back in the heels. Take an extra inhale. And then exhale, straighten your legs and fold. Inhale long. Exhale, plant your palms. Step back. Take extra care to lower down to your chaturanga and really fill up here on the upward dog. Be slow and considerate as you exhale, coming back to downward dog, and step your right foot forward. Come on up to our high lunge, our first high lunge. Hands can be on the hips. Have a long enough stance, and this is going to always be the case for high lunges, because if we're shortening our stance, we're actually technically cutting ourselves short about building up certain skills in the body. So yes, exactly. Front thigh parallel, back glute. What is the back glute? Is there a front glute? All the glutes are back glutes. So engage the left one as far as the back glute. It's the glute of the back leg. Soar your arms up. Actually try to lift your armpits further away from the hips. Take a deep breath in. And then still retaining the action of your left leg, bring your hands down. Step your right leg back. Lower slowly to your chaturanga. Hit the base of the exhale. And have a long enough exhale coming out of upward dog to step your left foot forward with. High lunge. Build it up, starting with the hands on the hips. Just at least to kind of get the network of your feet and your legs. Get the front thigh parallel to the ground, back foot vertical. And then when you're ready, arms go up. So again, the back leg, in this case, has a glute. And it's up to you to find out what that leg, so what that glute is. So engage the glute that's attached to the back leg. It's going to be your primary extensor muscle of the hip that allows you to keep the functional structure of this posture of your torso specifically. Take one more breath in. And then exhale, bring your hands down. On the same exhalation, lower to your chaturanga or the floor, of course. Inhale, upward dog. And exhale as you come back to downward dog. Relax the neck, let the head hang. Something interesting about this concept of body awareness, and we hear about body awareness all the time, not just from yogis and yoga teachers, but we definitely hear it also from exercise specialists and even scientists these days, meditation teachers. And more often than not, it's assumed that body awareness just really means feel what your arms and your legs, your neck, your chest are doing. But is that really all that is a part of this definition and this concept of body awareness? Inhale, lift the heels up. Exhale, bend your knees. Walk, step, or hop forward. Feet together. Inhale, lift your toes, lengthen the torso. Exhale, keep the toes up, fold the torso. And then at the first sign of your next inhale, bend the knees for Utkatasana. Sit heavy into the heels for just an extra breath. And then exhale, legs straighten, arms come down. Good. Let's put a couple of variations on the sun salutation. Bend the knees on the inhale, arms up. Exhale, straighten your legs while folding. Inhale long. Exhale, step or jump back, and make sure this exhale is also the completion of your chaturanga. Coming out of upward dog, use the same exhale to step the right foot forward. But before you do that even, hug your knee to your nose or to your head. Get as close as you can before stepping through. And then you got high lunge. Great step. So hands on the hips. If you're ready to take your arms up, you can take your arms up. Okay, so adding a little bit of a twist, we're going to twist to the right, bring your arms parallel to the floor. Your left glute, again, the glute associated with the back leg, is going to be the central mechanism that'll keep your torso from falling forward. So see if you can use it to pull your torso back even further. Try to get your back hand above or maybe even past the foot. Now inhale, turn back to the front. Straighten the front leg. Open up to a setup for triangle pose. Arms parallel to the floor. Keep the front leg straight. Now bend the front knee into warrior two. And with your front knee bent, you're going to be tempted to be pulled forward over the front knee. But do the opposite. See if you can pull your torso back over the back leg. So you're even slightly off center a little bit. Good. Now exhale, reach forward into your side angle pose, Parsvakonasana, just for a couple breaths. The classical arm position is where your whole arm from the fingertips all the way through the back leg like this is on one straight plane. Add a big dose of external rotation to the top arm, which is basically the turning of your bicep behind you. Lovely. Now left hand goes on the left hip. I think you guys are guessing where this might be going. We'll look out in front of your right foot and step forward into Ardha Chandrasana, balancing half moon. That's it. Keep your left hand on your left hip for now. Yes. And when you're ready, you can lift your left arm up. Take notice of the top leg so that you're not rotating the toes up, even though you're trying to lift the leg higher. So that action, when you lift your leg off the floor, is called abduction. One of the most important skills for the hips to have, a byproduct of your gluteus medius and minimus muscles. Quietly step back to Trikonasana, triangle pose. Well, technically not back because we haven't been there yet, but you get the point. Keep the front toes up, keep the front kneecap lifted. And with your left arm overhead, just for a moment, I want to start to work on the shoulders. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to bend the top arm, bring the left hand behind you so that your palm is facing out. Your palm is facing behind you like this. Good. And now see if you can slide your left hand even further around the body to possibly sneak your fingers right there to the top, or if possible even to the inseam of your right leg. And wherever you can get to your leg, dig your fingers actually right into the leg and use it to help you pry the left shoulder open, yes, while rotating your eyes and your nose up. Lovely. Now let's go back to side angle pose. Is this a long sun salutation or what? Forgot that we were in a sunset. Nope, keep that left arm behind you though in side angle. So you still continue with the bind, we still continue with the shoulder opening. Good, you got 2 more breaths. Good, then carefully take your hand out, bring your left hand to the mat, step your right leg back, and care slowly about the way that you're exhaling and the speed that you're lowering down with. As you come out of upward dog, bring your left knee as close as you can to your face before it steps through. Make sure it's a quiet stepping. It's like walking on eggshells. And when you come up, you got your hands on your hips or arms overhead when that's ready. Remember, there's 2 things. Well, it's really one thing about lunging poses, warrior poses. Your back leg is the engine and the power source. Your front leg is more of the steering wheel or the wheels. Turn to the left, arms parallel to the ground. So again, which glute is the glute associated with the back leg? Turn that on. And use it to help you reach your torso back a little further. On the next inhale, turn back to the front for high lunge. And then straighten your front leg and open up to triangle position setup. Just the setup. Arms parallel to the ground. Now bending the front knee, still keep the torso as vertical as you can. So even in Warrior 2, the idea is try to get the back hand above or even past that right foot. Exhale, come forward into side angle, Parsvakonasana. Keep your top arm in the classical position. So palm rotates back and bicep rotates back. But while you do this, also draw the shoulder up towards the ears. So this calls on your shoulder stability mechanisms that are a huge part of just maintaining your shoulder integrity. Then the right hand goes on the right hip. Look out in front of your left foot. Prepare where your left hand's going to go and set yourself up for Ardha Chandrasana. One thing that happens oftentimes I see is once people get into this pose, the bottom foot, especially the direction that the toes point, it kind of changes. It moves out of place. So just make sure your bottom foot is still in the same orientation as it was in side angle position. Try to lift your right leg up as if somebody's actually pressing down on it and trying to push it to the floor. And a quiet, deliberate step back to triangle pose. Good, nice and steady. Okay, so now here's where we're going to start with the arm bind. Rotate your arm internally, the right arm, bring it behind you so the palm faces out, and then sneak that right hand around. You can even bend the front knee just initially in the beginning. It'll help you anchor your fingers. And so where we want to try to reach is getting the fingertips right to the inner thigh. Squeeze your hand against the inner thigh and use it to pry the shoulder open as you rotate your nose up. Without removing your right arm from the position, come back to Parsvakonasana, side angle. Squeeze the back heel into the floor because the tendency is often to have more weight at the ball of the toes, the root of the toes. One more breath in. And on the next exhale, release your right hand, bring it to the mat, step your left leg back, and then take this vinyasa always at the behest of your own breathing, at the speed of your respiratory system. Good. Once you get back into dog pose, again, remember, reconfigure however much is necessary the habit of dog pose. If the hands are wider than the shoulders and the feet are more narrow than the hips, you want to be at least shoulder width and hips width. In the case of the legs, we can strive to be wider than the hips, and with the hands, the target is to start to bring them closer together. Good. On the next inhale, lift your heels up. Exhale, bend the knees. Walk, step, or hop forward. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold. Good. Now let's just stay here for a moment. Separate your feet about hips width. First thing, clasp your hands behind your back. Get a good interlacing of your fingers so that the tips of your fingers are squeezing very firmly against the backs of the hands, because the ideal is to have the entire perimeter of your palms be in contact with the other palm. And once you get the fingertips nice and strong, you get your hands sealed, start to pull your arms overhead. Make this pose active, make it dynamic, because it's midday, the sun is up in the sky, so right now our metabolism is really in a place where it could use even more activation. So as you lift your kneecaps and engage your quads, see if you can pull your arms a little further overhead. Now, when your arms get further and further behind you, pull your shoulders back so that your chest, even though it's rounding, it's not allowing you to slump the shoulders. Good. 2 more breaths like this. Soft neck, soft face, soft neck. Release the hands, place them back onto the mat, and step back to downward dog. Good. Now we're going to step forward with the right foot and bring the left knee to the ground. So low lunge. And for this one, try to maximize your low lunge so that it is more, the distance between the front foot and the back knee is a little bit more extensive. And then come on up. If you need a little padding for your left knee, you can use a towel or a blanket. But once you get upright, lift your arms overhead. And now point both palms up. So your fingertips are facing each other and your palms are facing up. Yeah, but you're not interlacing. Good. So you're doing this, basically. You're going to grab the left wrist with the right hand. Now push up with the right arm. So it's like you're pulling your left shoulder, your left arm out of the shoulder, and start to take a side bend to the right. Okay, so notice what at first is happening to the whole left side of the body as you do the side bend. Those of you that can handle a little bit more depth, because we're going to go into back bends, we're going to start to work on our hip extension. So crawl your right foot forward using the toes and start to lunge forward and bring your pelvis, but especially the front of your back thigh closer to the mat while you're reaching your body to the right. Now, if you have a lot of flexibility, as is the case with this lunge, you can actually move your front foot and your whole front leg a little bit off center. You know, even like a generous amount of off center, so that your right toes and your right thigh are pointing to like a 2 o'clock position, and that'll give you this lateral stability that will allow you to get even more lateral in the side bend. Lift your lower belly, engage your left glute. Notice how the deepening of your lunge has perhaps changed the sensations from just being the torso side stretch to now impacting the front of your left hip and leg. You got one more breath there. And then on the next inhale, return your arms to center. Bring your hands back to the mat. Take a vinyasa. And especially emphasize the butt squeeze on the upward dog. As soon as you get back to downward dog, step your left foot forward without bringing the knee to the nose. Even though it is so fun, pad your right knee if necessary. And again, just come up to a regular low lunge first. Lift your torso up. You don't have to get too much distance between the front and the back foot yet. Lift your arms overhead, and again, have your fingertips facing each other. And then grab the right wrist with the left hand. Lift your low belly. Keep your ribs from flaring out, and start to arch up and over to the left. Can you tell if this side bending, is more or less flexible as the previous? Now, however much you have currently in the side bend, start to crawl your left foot forward with the toes, and then lunge forward so as to bring your right thigh even closer to the ground. But this has to be with the partnership of your right butt. If your right butt isn't working, the psoas lengthening on the right side just doesn't really happen the way that it could. So we want to be able to squeeze out as much lengthening out of the psoas as possible. And as you persevere in arching up and over to the left, adjust your left leg to the left, so this time your toes and your knee are about a 10 or 11 o'clock position. So you get that lateral stability. Last 2 breaths. Even keep your back toenails pressurized on the mat. Inhale, come back up. Exhale, bring your arms down. Step back, take a vinyasa. Great. Now we're going to take a high lunge. So step your right foot forward, but Michelle is going to turn towards the screen so you can see her from the front. So she's going to keep her back heel actually at the wall. So back all the way up. So you're in a high lunge, and just start with your hands on the hips. There you go. And again, try to take a long enough of a lunge, which you really can't see from this angle, to where your front hip and your front knee are at the same level. Okay, and again, take your arms overhead. This time, interlace your fingers, clasp your hands. And doubling up on what we did before, now it's a little more challenging because the back leg is lifted. Start to arch up and over to the right and constantly check in with what it takes to balance. And now if you want to go a little further, if your side bend is pretty open, then you can actually move your front leg to the right a little bit. If you get a wider stance between the lateral stance between the feet, it gives you more stability. Yes, so then you can capitalize on that stability with your side bending. Engage your left glute, start to soften your eyes so that your eyes aren't protruding and bulging out into the world. There's an interest in our inner experience. Next inhale, come back up. Exhale, bring your arms down. Lovely, step your right leg back and take a vinyasa. Meet back in downward dog. Turn back there. No, it's okay. And now, coming back with the left foot forward. Yeah, turn towards the window. So now what you saw happening on the previous side, we're going to replicate here. So you're going to come up. Once your arms are overhead, get yourself into a deep enough lunge so your front thighs, again, starting to come close to that horizontal plane. Interlace your fingers tightly and begin to arch up and over to your left. The only reason you lose balance if you persevere into more side bending is because your feet are too narrow. They're on too narrow of a track. So the wider the track, the more stability begets flexibility, right? Just like competence begets confidence. Stability begets flexibility. And if flexibility is not born out of the field of stability, then it's almost useless flexibility. On the next inhale, come back up. Exhale, bring your arms down. Step your left leg back and take a vinyasa. Or just come back to downward dog. Okay, come down to your knees, come into child's pose. And in the Iyengar tradition, they actually don't have a pose that they call child's pose. It's not actually a thing. They call it Adho Mukha Virasana, which is just downward facing hero pose. Which, right, there isn't that much of a difference between them, but the only distinction between an Iyengar child's pose looking posture and just a regular child's pose is the downward facing hero of the Iyengar tradition has to be a little bit more dynamic. And all that really entails is just pressing with your hands. So for now, just give a little bit more push of your hands so that your elbows lift, and the pushing of your arms is exactly the same replication of movement that you do in downward dog. So this is going to press, yes, your hips right back onto your heels. This also gets you length on the side of the body, which is what we need for doing successful back bending. Now rest your head either on the floor or your blanket or a block without changing anything else. Just interlace your fingers behind your back. Okay, now you know where the floor is, you know where the ceiling is. So first thing, after you interlace your fingers tightly, draw the shoulders away from the floor. And that exposes your chest, the whole front of your respiratory apparatus. Keeping the shoulders away from the floor, start to reach your arms overhead slowly. And it doesn't matter exactly how far off of your body your arms come, right? Even though this is a pretty great angle, what's important is that you retain the integrity of your shoulders by this constant active management of your hands and your fingers. Relax the jaw muscle, relax the forehead muscle, and let's take these next 4 breaths just to see if the arms can find a little bit more distance. Good. Last 2 or so. Good. 1 more. Very nice. Carefully release the arms. And if you don't have one nearby, take the next whatever you need, 30 seconds or whatever, to grab yourself a couple blocks and a strap. If you don't have a regular yoga strap, you can use like a regular belt from your pants. If you don't have a regular belt, use like, I don't know, a telephone cord, rope, dog leash. Okay, so when you get your belt, first do this. Make a little loop with the belt, enough so that you could slide your foot through it without having to like really cram it on using your hands. Okay, and you're going to put that next to your mat and you're going to use it in a moment. Now you're going to have blocks, as I said, 1 or 2 blocks, and what we'll start with is a low lunge. So step your right foot forward between the hands and keep your left knee on the ground. Pad the left knee if you need to. Now, the idea for this lunge, bring it down, is to maximize the distance between your front foot and your back knee. And not so much by reaching the front foot forward, but think of it as more about how far you can get your left knee back and further back. Yes. So see if you can set it back even further. Right there. Good. Now that distance between your front foot and your back knee allows your hips to sit close to the ground. That's what we want. And then you're going to grab your belt, as Michelle's going to do, and you're going to place the belt loop over your back foot. So you can bend the back knee and just kind of loop it around. Okay. And you want to make sure that even though in a high lunge, in a long lunge like this, it's a little difficult to get the belt situated properly, but you want to make sure that the belt stays somewhere around the ankle. Okay, so then you put the rest of the belt down on the floor. Just leave the tail there, relax your left foot back down. And then grabbing a block, in this tall setting, you're going to place the block underneath your right butt bone. If that's not enough, what you can do is create a little tower of blocks where you have an upside down letter T, just to make up for any distance, like that. Okay. Now, if you don't need that, that's fine. And if you can actually go a little bit lower, you can set the block down at an even lower setting. So the next setting is obviously this one. Let's just stay high. Come back up. Okay, so then you're going to come upright, just like this. You want to make sure that your body weight is being borne on the block, on the right butt. Let me just move the block a little bit over. Right there. Okay, good. Now here's the thing with the back foot that you have the belt on. Take the tail of the belt and place it over your left shoulder. Just like that. Okay. Without hunching or slumping forward with the torso, you're going to start to push that belt forward like you're pushing it away from the body. So keep the belt horizontal, use both hands, and just push it forward so the back foot starts to lift. There you go. And keep pushing it forward as far as your back leg allows. Keep pushing it forward. Now, once you get to the maximum of how high your back foot lifts, how close it comes to your glute, angle the belt down so then it kind of solidifies and locks around the shoulder. So you just keep it there. Close your eyes and just stay steady for about 5 more breaths. But remember, you have to keep your left glute engaged in order for changes in your psoas to occur. Because we can do passive stretches on the psoas, and that kind of gives us some results. But the best kind of flexibility is the flexibility that we build by activating the opposite muscle groups, what are called the antagonist muscle groups. Let's take 2 more breaths here. Carefully let the belt slide back off the shoulder, and then bring your hands down. Step the right leg back, switch sides. So if it's a little easier on this side, when you first step your left foot forward, then place the belt around your ankle, around your foot, before you start to lengthen the stance. And so the stance lengthening is the distance maximization between back knee and front foot, but mostly of the back knee. You're extending it back further and further. Go a little further. Yes. And again, back to the block or blocks. Place that block at the tall or the mid setting underneath your left sitting bone. And when you come up on it, you want to take this whole element of like, whoa, I'm balancing out of the picture. You don't want to just think about like, how do I balance and not fall? You want it to give you a seat, like you're sitting on a bench. So then you grab the tail of the belt. You put it over your right shoulder. And start to push the belt, not up, but just forward. So just horizontal. Yep, just right here. And as you push it forward and forward further with your arms, you kind of walk your hands in closer to the belt, you push it out. Walk your hands in closer, keep pushing it out until your back foot can't lift any higher, until you reach kind of like the end of the road of your flexibility there. And then lock the belt down just by angling the tail towards the floor now. Engage the right butt. Keep the front toes up very nicely. Close your eyes, 5 breaths. Understand if there's a difference between how your right psoas and your left psoas, how they're constructed, what their habits and their competencies are. And so whatever you're feeling here on the front of the right leg and hip, compare that to the memory of what you experienced on the previous side. Good. Last couple breaths. And then carefully let the belt slide off the shoulder. Good job. And then bring your hands down, step your left leg back. And then for a moment, lie down on the mat onto your belly. So we all know Sphinx pose. Place your forearms on the mat. Okay, and let us start with the left leg. So you keep your right elbow, right, is the way that I'm kind of facing the screen, not exactly below your shoulder, but just a little bit forward of it. And then this next part, don't move the elbow, pivot on the elbow, and turn your forearm to the left, so it's at about that similar like 10, 11 o'clock position. So that gives you lateral control of stability. Bring your legs together. Switch arms. And then you're going to bend your left knee, grab the foot with your left hand for Ardha Bhikasana. And as you start to pull your heel towards your butt, right, it takes years to be able to get the heel to the butt for many of us. And so if this isn't the case for you yet, it's fine. So just as an example, your foot can be all the way out here. But as your foot gets closer and closer, you do this hand switch to where you go from holding the foot like this from the inside. Once it gets close enough, you kind of switch your hand around and you start to get your elbow from pointing in to your elbow pointing up. And then it goes from a pulling action to a pushing action. So it gives you a little more leverage, but you do have to have a minimum amount of flexibility to be able to do that with the shoulder without hurting it. Keep the toes of the left foot pulled back. Engage your glutes. And this is the often confusing and takes some time to get used to it part. Try to push your heel down to the butt or even to the floor and simultaneously see if you can start to lift your left knee off the ground completely. So what lifts the left knee and the left thigh, like this, yes, is the action of your left butt. And that might be a lot, especially if you were doing squats recently. Last breath out like that. Good. Release the foot. And then switch sides. So now position your left arm in the same way. Make sure the elbow stays forward of the shoulder. Turn your forearm to the right so that the angle of the forearm and fingers are at 1 or 2 o'clock. Bend your right knee. Hold the foot from the inside. And even just right at the beginning of the posture, start to acclimate your right glute to having to be a part of all of your back bend endeavors. If the glutes are kept out of back bends, your back starts to suffer. Because if your hips aren't extending the way that they should, the lower back tries to make up for it. And we don't want one body part to make up for the inability of other body parts. Once you get your heel close to the butt, start to lift. Even if you don't have your heel close to the butt, again, still try to lift that right thigh and knee. Keep the butt strong. Keep feeding your pubic bone into the ground. Stay tall on your left arm. 2 more breaths. Awesome. Slowly release the leg, the foot. And then pressing away from the ground with both hands, stand up on your knees, or rather stand up on your shins. And so we'll start with just a general basic idea of camel pose, Ustrasana. So if you need some more padding for your knees, again, you can use it for this pose. And if you actually have more and more padding on the knees, what's good about that, you want more? What's good about it is it helps you take the weight off of the knees and transfer it more right here. So ideally, where we want to aim to place most of our body weight is like mid-shin or lower. So hands on the butt, keep your butt engaged. And the traditional placement of the hands on the glutes in camel pose is like this. So your thumbs are facing your tailbone, and the rest of your fingers are kind of facing out laterally. So when you engage your butt this way, just go a little lower. Push your butt actually down. Make sure that your mic doesn't fall off. Okay, and then start to pull your chin backwards away from where you're facing, whatever that wall is, whatever that surface is. And as you pull your head back further and further, your chest will become more and more horizontal. So you want to be able to look down when you see it. Then you can start to take your eyes back behind you. So your hands can be at the glutes if they're not ready to come down. If they are ready to come down, maybe they come to the calves, maybe they come to the heels. This is why we were doing those shoulder stretches before with the arms behind the back to kind of get us ready for this type of position. And if you do have your hands now on your legs, press down away from the legs as if you're catapulting your chest up. So it almost feels like something is making it stand up a little bit taller. Last 3 breaths here. Take more weight off the knees. Imagine leaning back with your thighs. Inhale, slowly come up, and then sit right back on the heels. Okay, so while we let the nervous system kind of recover and settle after the back bend, let's take a little bit of a twist. So we're going to twist to the left first. Bring your left hand behind you. Bring the right hand to the outer edge of your left thigh somewhere. And just inhaling, pressing your left arm into the ground to get long and tall. Exhale, use the right arm to get twisted. You definitely can do this with your eyes closed the whole time. So you still have body awareness and you can still tell how far you're turning. And as you turn your chin progressively more and more to the left and over your shoulder, what you're actually training is your neck muscles to rotate better. And because the body works as a whole system, not in isolation, when we train the neck to rotate, that training is also shared with the rest of the spine. So notice how a twist feels after all of those stimulating kind of fireworky productions of a back bend. So body awareness can't just be, I know where my legs are or I know what my hands are doing. What else is in your body? It's your emotions. It's also your thoughts, right? It's every bit of your experience that you have. All of it is constituted in this like paradigm of your body. Inhale, come back to center, and then let's turn to the right. Right hand behind you, left hand holds the outer thigh. So a little bit more detail about twists, especially this twist. We get a little, intoxicated, you could say, about using that one arm to kind of get deeper twists. And we just start yanking on stuff. So not only just investing in the effort of your left arm, use the right arm behind you to feed the length into the spine. So as you inhale, slam the floor away from you, you're creating space in the torso. Because equal and opposite actions. When you press down with one part, the other part has to go up. Turn your chin a little bit further. And again, just notice body awareness, mind awareness. Mind exists in the body. There is no mind outside the body. There's no consciousness outside the body. At least as far as human beings have been able to tell and testify. So what's happening on this side of the twist? Is there a difference between any other emotional content as to the previous side? Inhale, come back to center. Stand up on the knees again. Okay, so now we're going to do a little B version, second version of Ustrasana. So maybe take a look at Michelle here real quick because she is a back bend extraordinaire. She's going to keep her hands on her glutes just like we had before. And instead of just bending back with the torso, what she's going to do right now, before going too much with the spine, she's just going to tilt back with her legs as if she's trying to bring her butt to her heels. So lean back, lean the thighs back, good, but not like sitting down. Yep. So thighs lean back while you're extending. And keep your thighs leaning back progressively more and more, yes, as you get into your back bend. And this is very nice. It's successful if you can get your hips not over, but actually behind the knees. And then eventually you can have the hands on the heels. So try that. So at the very first 10% or so of your back bend, begin to already recline with your thighs. And as you recline with your thighs, think about what you're doing. You're making your spine more horizontal, so you're actually taking pressure off the low back while also extending the low back. Good. If your hands do, good, come all the way to the legs. You can go all the way into Raja Kapotasana if that is your jam. Good. Stay. Close your eyes. 2 more breaths, friends. Press out against my legs. Ooh. And when you're ready, on the next inhale, press with your shins to come up. Sit back on the heels. Close your eyes. And because second back bends are typically deeper than the first ones, just stay steady. Drop your chin towards your chest. Let the back of the neck open up. The back of the neck is quite a magical place. You know, if there's anything magical in the body, the back of the neck should definitely be considered that. There's so much neurology associated with the back of the neck that gives you even just the possibility of body awareness. That's your neck extensor area. And oftentimes, if that's too constricted and tight, it starts to kind of obscure and occlude the messaging that goes on between the brain and the rest of the body. Okay, and then slowly lift your chin up, and then let's lie down on the back. Now, as soon as you lie down, hug your legs to your chest. Think of it more as a child's pose on your back when you hug your legs in. So that means keep your thighs from being right at the center. Keep your thighs a little more lateral, and just pull your knees right in towards the floor, basically. And as you do that, simultaneously try to infuse more air into your low back. You can even press your tailbone down on the inhale. Exhale, hug your legs a little bit deeper. Yeah, give yourself at least another 30 seconds in this hug, because we're just reversing some of those effects of the back bends. And even though our back bends weren't terribly advanced and extensive today, it's still nice to get that balance in the body. And back bend energy, I guess, the back bend physiology and sensations that are apparent are usually the first things that we discover when we discover yoga, because they're so palpable, they're so obvious. You do a back bend and it just kind of sends your whole system into a flurry. And then eventually we start to constrain that flurry and kind of channel it, as they say, so that, you know, it's kind of like this primordial version of like rage or anger or aggression, because that's more of a scientific term. So it's like we're channeling the aggressive response, the aggressive physical response of a back bend into mindfulness, basically. And to finish off our practice on this fine 3rd of July, any posture that you feel pertinent right now, so whether it's a spinal twist on your back or shoulder stand, maybe pigeon pose, I'll leave that up to you. But if you're doing a twist like the class demo is, the most important thing is, if your knees are bound, as they are here, kind of like in an eagle pose position, you want to make sure that the top knee is actually touching the ground. So when you're twisting, by enforcing stability in the legs, you're enforcing a little bit better stability through the rest of the spine. And stability has to be the bedrock that we build any other movement upon. Stability is just a natural part of our life. You know, if the ground wasn't stable, we'd never be able to walk anywhere. So we're always relying on stability to push us around, to navigate the environment. And even as a theoretical or a philosophical concept, as a construct of our values and even our morals, there are certain stabilizing factors that we're just born with, that we really do base our life around. You know, so like the principle of not harming, that we all know, that we don't walk around wanting to harm anybody, that then constructs the rest of our life's behaviors. And that's stability, that stabilizing knowledge that to not harm is a good strategy for having quality of life for yourself. And then to get yourself set up for Shavasana, use a blanket or your towel to get your head a little bit lifted, and then you can place something, find another towel or maybe a shirt to place right over the eyes. So when you do that, make sure that your nose is still open when you place something over your eyes so you can breathe, of course. And in general, you want to cover up the whole circumference of your eye sockets so that you give no chance for light to sneak into the eyes, to sneak in and start battering on your visual cortex. Distribute your body and your limbs evenly so that things can feel symmetrical, and then let that symmetry have some weight and start to unclench yourself from the movement and all the actions that were a part of your practice today. Relax your jaw. Remember that masseter muscle, that one's a bugger. That one is often strained and tight and we don't even notice. So body awareness does not exclude noticing what's happening in the jaw. And typically you want to stay in Shavasana until your heart rate is no longer elevated and you can actually imagine that the state of Shavasana can be taken with you to the rest of your day, and whatever else you do or whatever else happens, maybe it can be experienced with the stabilizing background of deep rest, not just a physical rest, but this return to who we truly are, the sense of presence that's beyond gender, beyond age, beyond our social status and race and everything else. Thank you for joining us for another awesome Friday practice today. Never forget to drink a lot of vodka right after class. No, I'm just kidding. A lot of water, please. You know who you are. And I will see you in the next practice. Reach out if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you. Namaste.